Have you guys ever wondered what would happen if Dallas Fuel had a pure projectile player and not just a regular projectile player? Not to take anything away from Seagull, but I'm talking about one of the best in the entire world. How much better would they be? Let's say maybe that player is Shadowburn. Would that help the Dallas Fuel become a much better team? Would they have still started out 1-7, or could they be 7-1? Could this be the difference maker that turns Dallas Fuel from a below average team into one of the best in the league? How good really is Shadowburn, and what could he do for the Dallas Fuel? And if the Dallas Fuel had him from the start, where would they be today? All of these questions will be answered in today's video. I got a lot of amazing feedback on my last video, guys. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. The runaway, if they joined Florida Mayhem, where would they be? So many people were demanding me to do another video like this, so I figured what else would be a good idea? And wow, what if Shadowburn actually joined Dallas Fuel? And it got me thinking, guys. So here we are. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and let's go ahead and hop right into it, guys. So to start this video off, let's take a look at the Dallas Fuel and see where they're at today. They're currently sitting at 1-7 in the standings, ranked number 10, only ahead of the Florida Mayhem and Shanghai Dragons. Their current roster is Coco, Custa, Taimu, Effect, Seagull, XQC, Mickey, Harry Hook, and Chips High-End. And up until this point, they've really struggled in the league so far. Despite having really close matches with some of the better teams in the league, they just haven't been able to find those wins. They've lost to basically every single team ranked above them besides the San Francisco Shock. Like I mentioned earlier, they've had some really close matches with some of the better teams in the league. One being Seoul Dynasty, the Los Angeles Valiant, as well as some decent matches versus the New York Excelsior and London Spitfire. However, they have suffered some devastating losses against teams like Houston Outlaws and Shadowburn's team, the Philadelphia Fusion. They are currently sitting at 5-3 and ranked 7, basically tied with 3 other teams, the Boston Uprising, Los Angeles Valiant, and Houston Outlaws. Although overall as a team, the Philadelphia Fusion have looked very inconsistent, I can tell you with full confidence that Shadowburn has been nothing but consistent for this team. They're still in the title stage playoff hunt, although they do need a lot of things to go their way for them to qualify, and more than likely won't qualify. They're not out of it yet. And as I mentioned, they are a very inconsistent team. At times they've looked amazing, like when they took out the New York Excelsior 3-2. Nobody expected that to happen. New York Excelsior looked like one of the best teams in the league, as well as their dominating win over the Dallas Fuel. But then they have had those very bad games where they just got completely destroyed, like against the Los Angeles Valiant 4-0, or when they nearly lost to the Shanghai Dragons or got reverse swept by the Los Angeles Gladiators. Although this video is mainly about Shadowburn and the Dallas Fuel, I figured it'd be good to bring up how the Philadelphia Fusion have performed so far this season, mainly because yes, Shadowburn is one of their key players. Now let's start hypothetically talking. What if Shadowburn did join Dallas Fuel? Well, let's start off by talking about some of Shadowburn's strengths and why he is a great player. For a very, very long time now, Shadowburn has been known for being one of the best Genjis in the entire world. But as of recently, we've been learning that he is not only just a good Genji, but can also thrive on multiple heroes. His Farah has been absolutely amazing. He has had really good niche picks with Zarya on Control Center, where he's built up gravitons at extremely fast paces and won fights for his team. He also surprised me by being able to play a solid Junkrat, probably one of his weaker heroes in his pool, but still, he is playing it at a very solid level and does what he needs to do on the hero. He also has a vast amount of experience, being a star World Cup player for Team Russia and competing in almost every single live event in Western Overwatch. The only thing that Shadowburn really missed out on as a player was competing in Apex, and now that he's in the Overwatch League, it doesn't really matter because he's competing against the best teams in the world. The way Shadowburn plays the map is very methodic. That utilizes the entire full kit, and more specifically the mobility and sneakiness of a Genji player. If you just sit down one day and take a look at Shadowburn's YouTube or Twitch and just watch his POV gameplay, his movement is extremely methodical and he makes sure he's always in the right position. This, as well as his decision making, is absolutely absurd. There's a saying about Shadowburn: when he Dragon Blades, he has this map in his head where he just knows exactly where every single player is, and because of this you can see him dash kill somebody and then instantly dash somewhere else before we even know it. He has definitely proven to be one of the best projectile players in the entire league, and he could do wonders for the Dallas Fuel. Now let's take a look at the Dallas Fuel's weaknesses and what Shadowburn can help them with. Obviously they're missing a raw projectile player. They always have. The acquisition of Seagull, yes, he plays a decent projectile, but they haven't even been utilizing him as that type of player. Seagull has seen almost no time on Genji or Farah. He has spent most of his Overwatch League games playing the Junkrat, where he's accumulated about 80% of his playtime. So it's very clear that they are lacking a strong projectile player. And because of this lack of a projectile player, we are starting to see that Effect is being held down extremely hard. He's not able to sit on that Tracer and be that dominant 24/7 Tracer player that we talked about yesterday. Players like SBB, Soon, Birdring, Harpe, Asher. There are so many teams in the league that basically run a 24/7 Tracer role. And we all know that Effect is one of the best Tracers in the entire league. So because of his team not being flexible enough and not capable of running the proper heroes that are needed, Effect has been picking up that slack and having to run heroes that he's an amazing player, but they're just not on the level of his Tracer. They're not fully utilizing Effect as a player, and if they were, he would be on Tracer 24/7. And if they had an amazing player like Shadowburn on that projectile, specifically Genji, they could really do wonders together. So now that I've talked about some of the weaknesses and strengths of Shadowburn and Dallas Fuel, let's get more in depth. Let's talk about how Shadowburn could really help them. Let's take a look at some statistics about Shadowburn, Dallas Fuel. So first, let's start off and look at Shadowburn's overall Overwatch League statistics. Let's take a look at his playtime. We have 4 hours and 41 minutes spent on the Genji, an hour and 14 minutes spent on Farah, and an hour and 6 minutes spent on Junkrat. Of course, I set this at every hero with 10 minutes. We mainly want to focus on the heroes that he plays a lot. So starting off with Genji, he has a 1037 rating, a 40% team fight win ratio, and a 47% win ratio overall with his team. He gets an average of 31.6% of his team's kills and averages 11.06 kills per 10 minutes, along with 6.97 deaths per minute. His KD sits at 1.59. The next hero we'll look at is his Farah, where he has an hour and 14 minutes, 1,184 rating, a 56.6% team fight win ratio, and a 48.57 win ratio overall. He gets on average a 31% of his team's kills, 12.13 kills per 10 minutes, and only has 4.58 deaths per 10 minutes, sitting at a 2.65 KD. The third hero is Junkrat, an hour and 6 minutes, 987 rating, 56.25 team fight percent win ratio, 48% win rate overall with his team, averages 31.1% of his team's kills, a 9.97 kills per 10 minutes, and 5.59 deaths per 10 minutes at a 1.7 KD. He also plays Tracer, but I don't really find the need to go through these statistics since he doesn't really play that role at all. And last but not least, we have his Zarya pick, where he's played 20 minutes with 1,169 rating, 57.69 fight win ratio, and 36% win rate overall. He gets 25% of his team's kills, averages 11.02 kills per 10 minutes, and 6.71 deaths per 10 minutes. And lastly, his KD is 1.64. I know this is a lot of information to take in, so feel free to pause the video, look at all the statistics yourself, but I felt it was very important for me to point all these out, and now we're going to compare them with some other players. So let's go ahead and take a look at his Genji statistics compared to everybody else in the Overwatch League. We set the time played on the hero at 1800 seconds, which is 30 minutes. And let's go ahead and look at it. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at it. We got Shadowburn on Genji, who, like we pointed out earlier, has 4 hours and 41 minutes played on the hero, which is actually an hour and a half more played on Genji than the second player in the Overwatch League. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the rating, where we see Shadowburn is sitting at 6 with 1,037, just a little behind Dreamcasper in agilities. Then we look at the fight win percentage, where he does fall a little behind, but this is mainly based on how good your team is and how much they win in general, as well as the win rate here, where he is kind of middle of the pack still. Now, let's look at percentage of teams' kills, where he is sitting at second with 31.6, only behind Tavik. Now let's look at the kills per 10 minutes, where he's sitting at third, only behind Wakid and Prophet. Taking a look at the deaths per 10 minutes, he's sitting at top 4 with only 6.97 deaths per 10 minutes. Now let's take a look at the KDs, where he is sitting at top 3 at 1.59. Now overall, as we can see, Shadowburn has way more hours than a lot of these players, basically 4 times more than Prophet, about 6-7 times more than Wakid, and just in general has way more than everybody else, and is consistently at the top with some of the best Genjis in the league, like Prophet and Wakid, who have much better teams and smaller sample sizes. So I think it's fair to say, statistically, Shadowburn is one of the best Genjis in the entire league. Now let's take a look at the Farah statistics, We have in time played, he is ranked at 4th with an hour and 14 minutes, only behind Fleta, Dreamcasper, and Hydration. Pretty close though, the margin of difference on the Farahs is not as big as the Genji. If we take a look here at the rating, we'll see that Shadowburn is actually the #1 rated Farah in the entire league. Alright, then let's look at his fight percent win ratio. Sitting at a 56.67% fight win ratio. Basically, when his team is running Farah, they are doing much better than when they are not. And he is much higher than a lot of the other players in the league. His team sits at a 48% win ratio though, so as we can see, his team is holding him back in this statistic. Now let's take a look at the percentage of team's kills. He's sitting at 31%, only behind Dreamcasper and Fleta. Now let's look at the kills per 10 minutes. He's sitting in second, only behind Dreamcasper. Now we talk about deaths, he's sitting at second again, with only 4.58 per 10 minutes. Looking at the KD, Shadowburn has the highest KD of all Farahs in the entire league. So I think it's fair to say, looking at the Farah statistics, that Shadowburn is, if not the best Farah in the league, top 2 or 3. He is consistently up there in every statistic, and when we just sit there and watch him play, you can tell he is a very dominant Farah. So far, Shadowburn statistically is looking like a great player. Now that we've taken a look at most of Shadowburn statistics, I felt it would be a good idea to compare him a little bit to Seagull and see what he has been doing as the projectile player for the Dallas Fuel. As I briefly mentioned earlier, he has spent most of his time sitting on the Junkrat, and then only has 20 minutes on Hanzo and 15 on Genji. So his Junkrat overall is not that bad. He has a pretty good rating and good fight win and win rate percentage on it, despite how bad Dallas Fuel is doing. So when they put him in on Junkrat, the Dallas Fuel plays much better. I'll give him that. So overall, Seagull's Junkrat is pretty good. As for his Hanzo and Genji though, not so much. His stats are lacking in those categories. So now that we've seen that Seagull is mainly a Junkrat player and that is his best role, let's go ahead and compare it to Shadowburn's Junkrat. So as we can see here, Shadowburn does have much less time than Seagull on the Junkrat, about an hour and 39 minutes less, but an hour and 6 minutes is still a good sample size. So let's go ahead and compare these. As we can see, he has a higher rating than Seagull. His team wins more team fights when he is on the Junkrat, but overall has a lower win rate than Seagull's team does when he is on Junkrat. He does slightly get more kills for his team when he is on that Junkrat, but gets less per 10 minutes. Now this comes down to play style and how aggressively Seagull's team is playing when he is on the Junkrat, and how passive Shadowburn's team has been playing when he's on the Junkrat. And again, it's the same situation with the deaths. Both teams play a different play style, so one of them is getting less deaths and one of them is getting more. So those are a little skewed, along with the KD. But in general, the stats are pretty similar, and what we can tell from this is that Shadowburn is probably at the same level as Seagull on Junkrat. Alright, so I know we spent a decent amount of this video looking at statistics, but I feel it is very important to look at them because it is the best way to gauge how good Shadowburn is and how much he can bring to Dallas Fuel, and therefore being able to judge how good Dallas Fuel would be with him. So to recap real quick, let's take a look at some of the things we talked about that Shadowburn can bring to the Dallas Fuel and why he would improve them. First, we mentioned just how good overall he is on projectile. We looked at the statistics. It shows he is a great projectile player, whether it's on the Farah, Genji, or Junkrat. He can perform at a high level consistently on every single one of those heroes. And Dallas Fuel's main weakness is that they don't have a strong projectile player, someone who can specifically combo with effect and be that deadly Tracer Genji combo or that Farah Tracer combo. I think it is fair to say that if Effect had the luxury of having an amazing Genji and Farah player on the team, he would be able to do so much more and put the team on his back like he used to in metas where it wasn't really that important to have a Genji or Farah with you. Now it's really starting to become a factor for the Dallas Fuel that they do need a strong Genji and Farah play on a lot of these maps. So now that I've recapped on some of the things I've brought up, let's take a look at how Dallas Fuel could have done so far in the league if they had Shadowburn on the roster. So let's go ahead and hop into it and look at the Dallas Fuel's matches played so far. First, the Dallas Fuel took on Seoul Dynasty in the opener. Now this was a very close match, and Dallas Fuel even looked like the better team in the first two maps. But unfortunately though, by the end of it, Seoul Dynasty did come out on top. And because of it being so close, I think if Shadowburn was in there, they would have gotten this win. I think Seoul Dynasty would have started out 0-1, and Dallas Fuel would have been 1-0. And with that victory, they would have never been put in the situation going up against the Los Angeles Valiant where, wow, we screwed up last match, we really choked and threw it away. Let's be sure that we don't panic and throw away this one against the Valiant. And because of that, those first two maps that barely went Los Angeles Valiant's way would have went Dallas Fuel's way, and it would have been a clean 4-0 victory for them. So going into week 2, the Dallas Fuel are sitting at 2-0 with victories over two very strong teams in the league. And who are they facing? The Houston Outlaws, who went 0-2 in the first week and are looking to capture their first victory. Now, this match in our world was not close at all. The Houston Outlaws completely dominated the Dallas Fuel. But if we take a look at that match, you'll see that the Dallas Fuel actually ran a completely weird roster and just looked like they weren't even trying in the match. It was such a sad loss. It was pathetic. Now, if we put the Dallas Fuel with Shadowburn, who won their first 2 games going up against the Houston Outlaws, I think it would have been a much different result. It's hard to say that the Dallas Fuel would have won since it was so dominating for the Houston Outlaws. This one is very hard to judge, but I think since they went 2-0 last week, they would beat the Houston Outlaws and start off 3-0. Alright, so now you guys are probably sitting here like, come on, Michael, like 3-0, the Dallas Fuel, no way. I really do think if they had Shadowburn, guys, they could have won those first 2 matches. I mean, they were insanely close, specifically that Seoul Dynasty match. It was insanely close, and if they didn't go into the Los Angeles Valiant match feeling down, they would have been able to win that one too, because the first 2 maps were very close, and Shadowburn would have gave them the edge to win them. So yeah, I think the Dallas Fuel would be 3-0, heading into their match against the London Spitfire. Now, this match was sort of close, not really, and it was before the London Spitfire really started to ramp up. So I think this one would be a very close one, but because Birdring and Prophet are just a better DPS duo over Effect and Shadowburn, the London Spitfire still would have won this one, probably 3-2. Which brings up the quick talk about DPS duos. I do believe if Shadowburn and Effect were together on the same team, they would be a top 2 DPS duo in the league, with only Prophet and Birdring ahead of them. Now, moving on to week 3, we saw San Francisco Shock taking on the Dallas Fuel, and no change here. It would have been a dominating 4-0 win for Dallas Fuel, and then the very next day, about 10 hours later, they would have taken on the Boston Uprising, which was again a very close match. Obviously, it would have slid into the favor of Dallas Fuel if they had Shadowburn and were on that incredible, so they end up taking that win over Boston, and now their record is 5-1 heading into week 4. Now, week 4 is interesting because their very first game was against the Philadelphia Fusion, and they absolutely got destroyed. But Philadelphia Fusion obviously had Shadowburn in our world, and the other world, they don't have the luxury of having him, and Dallas Fuel are on an absolute tear. And Philly is also coming off that 0-4 loss against the Valiant. Now, it's hard to judge whether Philly would have beaten New York Excelsior without Shadowburn. They probably wouldn't have, and I definitely don't think they'd be as strong as they are without him. So, because of this, I think Dallas Fuel take this match, putting them at 6-1. Heading into the last match of the week, we have the New York Excelsior and the Dallas Fuel. And in our alternate reality, both of these teams are sitting at 6-1. And the winner of this will decide who the number 1 ranked team is going into week 5. I believe that the Dallas Fuel would lose this match. I think overall New York is just a better team, even with Shadowburn being on Dallas Fuel. So I say New York takes this 3-1 or 3-2. So moving on to the very last week, the Dallas Fuel are taking on the Shanghai Dragons, which is a 4-0 win for them easily in our alternate reality. And in their last match, they're taking on the LA Gladiators, which is also probably a free win for them, 4-0, leaving them with a finishing record of 8-2. Now, real quick to take a look at some of the other teams in this reality and seeing where they stand, we also have the London Spitfire sitting at 8-2, and the New York Excelsior at 9-1. In this reality, Seoul Dynasty would miss out on the playoffs with losses against all 3 of the top teams, New York Excelsior, London Spitfire, and Dallas Fuel. So as you guys can see, I obviously believe that if Shadowburn did join the Dallas Fuel prior to the Overwatch League starting, they would be a much better team and would be sitting pretty in the title matches. Sure, it's hard to really tell where they would be because this is all hypothetical. They could be 1-7 still. You never know. At the end of the day, I really just believe that Shadowburn would be a great fit for Dallas Fuel simply because he is everything they have needed in a player. Even prior to the Overwatch League, Envious has always needed a projectile player, and if they had that luxury, Effect would be unleashed on the Tracer, and he would easily be one of the best in the league. Along with Shadowburn, they could do so much damage, and the Dallas Fuel would be a much better team. Obviously, something I didn't bring up is the XQC situation and how that all would have been changed. It's hard to tell that if Shadowburn joined the team, whether or not XQC would have been in trouble. Obviously, the comment about Houston Outlaws would not have happened because they probably would have won that set. But you never know with XQC, he might have done something crazy and outrageous regardless of that and received a ban. If he didn't, but in this world, it's still more likely that he doesn't get banned And because of this, I think that he ends up getting more starts in playtime than Coco. Overall, the team atmosphere of Dallas Fuel would be much better. They would have never gone through that slump of depression where they just really weren't happy with themselves and were confused as to why they were doing so bad. All of it would have been avoided, but of course that's not actually what happened. Again, this is all hypothetical, and if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to my channel, check out the previous one I did on Runaway in Florida Mayhem, add me on Snapchat, follow all of my social medias, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a great day. I'm out of here, guys. Peace.